So the blue ring is all about hope.
Hope, yep.
And the orange ring is all about greed.
Greed. And green is all about willpower.
Right. And so what does your ring do?
That?
Yeah.
Bills, shared insurance policy. I have to check in.
Nagging.
I cook. I didn't say it.
This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by GoDaddy.com and Netflix.com.
Hey, welcome to a very special edition of iFanboy, the comic book discussion show from the website iFanboy.com.
Are we doing the drug thing today?
You just added a layer of pressure on top of that show.
My name is Ron, and I'm here with...
I'm Josh, and no one touched me.
I'm Connor, and I'm clean. No track marks.
Show me on
of
the
any
doll.
kind.
Show me on the doll.
Today's a big day for comics. If you're into
a huge day.
DC Comics, superhero comics, today's the first issue of Blackest Night is out in the stores.
In theory.
The big DC event.
And we get one of the most requested emails or questions and emails we get is, how do I get onto Green Lantern's comics?
Or I want to read Green Lantern, what do I need to know?
Yes.
What should I be reading?
Green Lantern's, for years now, there's been the buzz book at DC, and more and more people are jumping on, and people who never read Green Lantern, people from Marvel, and they're always emailing us asking, how do I get into the Green Lantern comics? So now we thought we'd talk about the Green Lantern books and help you get into these books on this day where you can read Blackest Night, and how do you get up to speed for that event?
So we should probably explain what Green Lantern is.
Yeah.
Let's do that. The Green Lantern Corps is a group of space cops, like you said.
Right, space cops.
They're centered on a planet called Oa. Oa's got a bunch of these little blue dudes who are called the Guardians.
Yep.
They are in charge of the central power battery, which powers all the rings that Green Lanterns get. And what the rings do is they take your imagination and your willpower and they build reality out of it. They build a thing.
Constructs.
Yes. They can do all sorts of things. They're in DC, they're known as the most powerful weapon in the DC universe, I think,
Right.
And
depending on your ability to imagine and
your
maintain.
willpower.
And the ring kind of seeks out its ring holder based off of their general willpower makeup and courage and that sort of thing. And each Green Lantern, because there are multiple Green Lanterns per sector, so like Hal Jordan is the one for our sector here on Earth. There are lots of aliens who are different Green Lanterns. Each use the power of the ring differently. So some are a little more expressive and make complicated things, while others are just more kind of forceful and just use it as a
hammer.
Yeah, exactly, or just as a wave of energy, or and so you see. Over the years, through the other people who wielded the ring, you've seen the different kind of takes on the power and that sort of thing.
And there's all sorts of different corpsmen, and all sorts of aliens, and that's one of the fun things that they can do is they can show a bunch of different kinds of guys.
Do you know the oath?
Very stand Blackest Night, no evil shall escape my sight.
That was all unintelligible.
Slower.
Slower. Give me 50% of that.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.
That's what Hal was they're supposed to say that as they're charging their
When
ring.
does the 5-year mission part come in?
That is not this.
All right.
I see. Well, if you know anything about Green Lantern at all, you know that Hal Jordan is the Green Lantern of Earth. He's the
One of two.
He's the
He's the prime.
He's been the main guy since the Silver Age.
But he was dead for a really long time, and so
Well, not only did he dead, he went crazy, then he
went
became
evil.
evil, and he killed, and
you don't need to read all that stuff.
Yeah, that's
basically
all.
the point being he was
was
dead.
gone. Yeah.
Hal Jordan is the Green Lantern.
So the best place to start is probably with Green Lantern Rebirth.
Right.
You can
Yep.
go from there, and this was, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. Jeff Johns and Ethan Van Sciver did what they're doing with Flash now, and they
reintroduced him as the Green Lantern because he was
Yes.
gone.
He was the
Kyle-
Spectre, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Before that.
he was a bunch. Again,
Doesn't
we're
matter.
gonna
Doesn't
ignore what happened before that
Yeah.
and just
He
go
was
from
gone.
that point. You don't need to know all that stuff. So they bring him back, and they've got to build up a new character again. It's really interesting that today, all these issues later, it's working.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, and how you say you don't need to know all that, yet Rebirth also dealt with all that.
Yeah.
It tells you what you know.
Well, no. I mean, the main thrust of the book was fighting Parallax, which was the evil yellow force that took over Hal and made him go crazy, and they dealt with the fact that he was a Spectre, but in a way that you didn't need to have read all that
Right.
and knew
It
about.
was introduced into the series itself.
And so, that's evidence of Jeff Johns, the writer's ability to take these characters with these histories and make them accessible to new readers again.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
So that's a good place to start. If you want to handle on Hal Jordan and how he is into the universe and what his relationships are and who he is, Rebirth is a really good, and there's a collection of it.
Yep.
And is it the rumor that there's going to be a big collection of it? That's a rumor.
There's always
Rumor
a rumor.
and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Well, but anyway, it's a collection, and it's a good place to start.
And that's
Ethan
where
Van Sciver.
Hal punches Batman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Batman's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
So then you can probably skip way ahead, right?
There's Wanted, I believe, is the next. It's sort of the beginning of the current Green Lantern series. There's a couple of things in there you don't need to read. I actually stopped reading those issues. They weren't terribly interesting to me at the time.
There was some stuff with the cowgirl, with the other plane pilots and stuff like that. Yeah.
One thing that the issues did do was establish the new Green Lantern as police force.
And the Corps.
Like they've always, the Green Lantern Corps has always been the universal peacekeeping force, but in these issues, Jeff Johns really made them like cops. They had partners. They spoke like cops. They used lingo. They had those the glowing badges on their chests. So those issues, if anything, helped him. He worked through those things to get to the point where.
The next sort of big thing that happened in Green Lantern world is the Sinestro Corps War.
It was the Secret Origins. Was that after?
It actually came after.
Oh, you're right. It did.
Yeah, it did.
So you could read Secret Origins first, but I tend to go in the order that they presented it to us because it makes sense more later.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sinestro Corps War. Basically, Sinestro is
his villain, his nemesis.
He's his Lex Luthor.
He's the failed Green Lantern who was a. He took his power and went totalitarian and said, I have the might, I have the right, I know what's best for everybody. So he decided to impose his will on his sector. They booted him out. He went evil. He formed his own corps.
And they have yellow rings that are based on fear.
And yellow traditionally was the weakness of green, but it's gone now.
In the history of Green Lantern, back in the day in the Silver Age, the Green Lantern ring worked on anything except the color yellow.
That was the impurity.
Which is a little hokey, but because there was this impurity within the power battery, which was this parallax, which is fear and all that kind of stuff. So it's tying in the emotions a little more.
Exactly. And so the Sinestro Corps War was the first big event that happened, and I think that was, a lot of the people who had liked Hal Jordan before and had a history, they were into Rebirth. But it didn't. I don't know how many new people it brought in. But when Sinestro Corps started, there was such a buzz, and people. There was the special that was done by Ethan Van Sciver first, and then the big war that went between Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps, which is a separate title.
That special got a lot of buzz. It sold out right away.
That one
People
issue.
wanted it.
It was great.
It went to like 4 printings. It was for some reason that one like 48-page special was just really blew up.
Yep. Well, because what was great was that you had, the Green Lantern Corps as this army, and you had what was classically Hal Jordan's arch nemesis building his own army, and
they fought.
And which
it was brutal.
In
and
space, it was awesome. Yeah.
And great Ethan Van Sciver art, really intricately detailed pages, big double-page spreads.
The other artist has been Ivan Reis for the most part.
Recently.
Who is
he's grown to become just as good as Ethan Van Sciver.
This is exactly what I'm saying.
Was it in the special or was it in the finale? I think it was in the finale of Sinestro Corps War when Van Sciver and Reis.
It was the finale.
Yeah, when they traded off on pages and like their style was so similar that you couldn't even really tell, but they both rocked it. It was just like, it was great.
So if you get through the whole Sinestro Corps War and you enjoy that, you would probably want to know more. From there...
Then you pull back to the origins.
You pull back and they go back to the Secret Origin, which was a 7-issue series, and there's a trade available of that.
Which at the time, we because there was so much momentum with the Sinestro Corps War, it brought the tempo back down.
Yeah.
The first issue was my pick of the week, though.
Yeah, right.
Because the thing is...
No, they were all good.
They were all good.
Yeah.
But there was such a pace and such a frenetic, there's such an excitement to the Sinestro Corps War, and then this idea, okay, we're going to tell you Hal Jordan's Secret Origin.
But, it was almost smart because so many people joined in with the Sinestro Corps War and didn't know who Hal was or what he was all about. Then they learned about Hal.
What it also did was it cemented the relationship between Hal Jordan and Sinestro because we find out a lot about Sinestro being a Green Lantern and them working together and all that.
And their relationship. And it was good because... this is the first time they've been able to revisit that in a while and make it fresh for people, and that's one of the things that Jeff Johns does really well. Jeff Johns is the architect of this whole thing. Pete Tomasi's working over on the Green Lantern Corps book as well. Also,
but they work together, and they work together.
You don't need to read it. You should if you want to. It's very good.
Secret Origin?
You don't need to read Corps.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
yeah. So basically, but the Secret Origin gives you the root. But I would read it after Sinestro Corps War because it was intended that way, I suppose.
So we're up to 3 trades now. We're up to Rebirth, and then Sinestro Corps War, and then two trades worth, and then Secret Origin. So now you got 4 trades. Good stuff.
Yes, and then that brings us up to what we'll be talking about after the break.
Hey everybody, GoDaddy.com has what you need. And what do you need? Well, .com names are as low as $1.99 a month. They got world-class hosting, fast and free website builders. GoDaddy's hosting plans have 99.9% uptime, free 24/7 support, and no annual commitment. The private domain registration from GoDaddy.com protects your privacy by keeping your address, phone number, and more out of the public database. You can customize your own virtual dedicated server by choosing one of 3 popular plans or by selecting your own Linux or Windows server with all the plan options you might need. You can get a GoDaddy.com secure certificate for your website, and visitors, prospects, and customers will have total confidence in your online business. And if you're a podcaster or a video blogger, you're going to want a .tv domain name to stand out from the crowd. Also, be sure to check out revision3.com/GoDaddy for all iFanboy's GoDaddy deals and codes. Thanks to Netflix for sponsoring this episode of iFanboy. With Netflix, you can rent over 90,000 titles online, including lots of Blu-ray titles, with free shipping both ways to your home. They now have over 40 shipping centers, so almost all deliveries happen in just one business day. And Netflix plans start at $4.99, and as a new member, you can get a no-risk 2-week free trial membership by checking out www.netflix.com/iFanboy, and remember to use www when using that code.
Well, one of the reasons that we're talking to you about this today, and one of the reasons that everybody's so excited, is because of the upcoming Blackest Night event.
Right.
And this has been being built since the beginning of the Green Lantern run that we've been talking about, but really starts up after the Secret Origin. The seeds of it are in there.
I've been really, I mean, all of us have, but I've been really excited about the past year or two of Green Lantern as Jeff Johns has kind of started revealing the cards of what he's been, the kind of seeds he's been sowing. And what he's done is he's slowly introduced, and it happened right at the end of the Sinestro Corps War.
The prophecies?
That was the trigger. So basically, we mentioned the Guardians of Oa, and there's this big book of Oa, which has all these prophecies and all this whole, like, it's basically the story of the universe.
Right.
And the Guardians are really kind of jerks in a bit of a way, and there's a bunch of stuff they just kind of want to ignore.
They're like a bunch of little Charles Xaviers.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of stuff that they want to ignore, they don't want people to know about, and things like that, and this stuff's starting to come out, and part of that is the fact that there are other rings other than green rings or yellow rings.
Which, by the way, is like the most elementary idea.
Well,
and somewhat controversial too, but interesting.
I mean, Jeff Johns simply said, Roy G. Biv, the range of colors, there is an orange ring, and there's a red ring, and there's a blue ring, and there's an indigo ring.
And I don't mean to say that in a bad way, it seems like such an obvious answer that no one did it before.
Exactly.
But you know what else is great is he did use Roy G. Biv, and green is right in the middle.
Yeah.
In that phraseology, which has worked out well for him.
And what's interesting is that not only, because it's easy to take the colors, but then really look at each one of those colors and see what they represent, what emotion is connected to it. Because you have green is willpower and courage, or depending. And yellow, of course, is fear. But so you look at orange, and orange represents greed, and blue represents hope, and red represents rage or anger.
Yeah.
And it just
indigo is love,
compassion, and there's just it's such a ridiculously simple idea. I wonder why it took 40 years.
And that's often the best ideas, the ones that they're almost. People sometimes, I think too hard and overlook the easy stuff.
So for the past year or so, we've had all these kind of mini stories leading up to it, where we got introduced to the Rage of the Red Lanterns and the agent.
Well, basically, we got every little section introduced to us. Yeah. We met the Indigo people, we met the Blue Lanterns. Probably the Red Lantern story was probably the best of those.
Kitty, the little cat. I love
the blood spew.
Yeah, because the Red Lanterns, they spew this red blood plasma thing. Angry.
They're so angry,
like
they're
blood.
And in the Green Lantern book, Hal Jordan has been at the center of this. So he, the Red Lantern Atrocious Atrocitus wanted revenge on Sinestro, and Hal got in the mix there, and then he got pulled in and was a Red Lantern briefly, and then he got introduced to the Blue Lanterns, and he became a Blue Lantern, and so it's half. But now he's been half blue, half Green Lantern.
Well, he's got a blue in one hand and a green in the other, and they've been fighting over his. The blue. Sometimes the blue's more and the green's more. It depends on.
And all of this is funny because it's all an exploration of Hal Jordan's character.
Yeah.
And because blue is hope.
Yeah.
So
and he represents all these things.
Yeah. And it's interesting how it's worked out so far, and we don't know what's going to happen. So then that leads us to the Blackest Night is about the Black Lanterns. Black, of course, being the absence of color, if you want to look at it in the sense of what light actually is.
Yeah.
It leads one to believe that later there may be a White Lantern, which is all colors combined.
This is probably gonna be Hal.
Maybe
speculation.
Just total speculation.
So Blackest Night is the emergence of the Black Lanterns, and as we've seen through some various teaser art as well as some.
Don't give any away.
No,
I haven't seen.
I wasn't. Yeah, I was gonna say, but through some unfortunately timed toy. Promotions, we found out who some of the characters were, but it's the idea of they're basically almost like zombie lanterns or undead.
They are. It's a zombie book from what I understand.
Yeah.
It's all these dead characters are the Black Lantern Corps. So a lot of recognizable people that have died.
Shocking.
If you just think about who has died in the last 2 years in comics, big names, you can find out.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a story that was in an Avengers annual in the late 80s where they had to.
Wow.
It reminds me of a story. They had to fight a bunch of dead heroes. Like Cap had to fight Bucky,
really?
and a bunch of people. Like the Games Master did it. It just reminds me of that. That's all.
Oh, chilling.
Well, so Jeff Johns is a hack.
No, I'm just saying it was. It's It's a trope, but it was. He's been building this for 44 issues or so. 41 issues.
Well, from Rebirth, he's been building towards this, which is that idea of that like long planned out kind of story is just absolutely amazing, and that's why I can't wait for Blackest Night and to see what it is.
And it's almost more than a Green Lantern tale because it's spanning a bunch of different heroes, and if you look, the villains are going to be spanning all across the DCU. So it's really actually a big tale.
Yeah.
So that's basically where you are with Green Lantern. We've given you the books that you would need to get up to speed and to take a look.
So to recap, start with Rebirth, right?
Yep.
Then the Sinestro Corps War.
2 books.
And then if you want a little more go deeper, the Secret Origins. And then what was the fourth one?
Then there's all the Prelude, which is
they'll be collecting
colors and all that kind of deal.
Agent Orange, things like that.
Yeah.
But there are also, if you were interested, a couple of other sort of key Hal Jordan stories. We used to get the question like, what are the best Hal Jordan stories? And
it was tough for a while to answer.
Yeah, they're a little few and far between, but there are a few that we.
Let's go in chronological order here. You can get the old classic Hal Jordan tales, right?
The Silver Age stories.
You can get this in a showcase.
But also in the cheaper softcover
Showcase.
Green Lantern Chronicles, they just started doing.
Oh, really?
Oh, showcases
cool.
are in black and white.
They did the Batmans, Supermans, and Green Lantern. They're really positioning Hal now as the third
He's taken
most
over
prominent DC character. He's got an animated movie coming out this summer. They're prepping a live action film. Yeah. They're really pushing Green Lantern as the next, like, the big guy in the universe. But, so you can get these expensive old hardcovers, but there's also the cheap Chronicles, which are about $10.
Yeah.
And in these old stories, you can see the adventures of Hal Jordan as insurance salesman, or Hal Jordan as toy salesman.
Yeah. These do read like they're out of the time. They were late 50s, early 60s. His buddy Pie Face it's a little unfortunately.
But if you're a fan of that stuff and you like things like Tom vs. the Flash, these things will be right up your alley.
These are written by John Broome, who wrote a lot of the classic Flash stories, and they're drawn by Gil Kane, who's
the Gil Kane artwork is great.
Very smooth. Very, very nice. And that's Showcase 22 was the first appearance. That stuff's all there.
The classic.
After that,
then you get to the 60s and 70s era. Denny O'Neil. Neil Adams, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, this is a old hardcover edition that they don't sell anymore, but this is...
You can find it at cons.
This is the first time they printed it, and we all got it. They have it in soft covers, I believe, now, two soft covers. But this is the famous Hard Traveling Heroes storyline where Hal and Ollie Queen and Green Arrow go across the country. And
you basically...
Social ills.
You find out that, like, Hal Jordan... He didn't really know a lot about what was going on the ground.
He didn't know about the black man. He knew about the blue man.
And the purple man.
But not about the black man. This is no less of the time than this old.
Exactly.
I mean, this is very much of this. Is this early 70s?
It was early 70s. It was like 72.
70. 70 to 73. So this is very much of the era, and you have to sort of put your mindset into the fact that there's a lot of jive talking and
there's a lot of explication that you wouldn't be used to.
Right. And it was mainly like I said, looking at the social ills of America as they travel across country, and it dealt with also. It was one of the first comics to deal with drugs as a topic, as Green Arrow's Ward Speedy is a heroin addict, and that's the classic cover.
The other thing he does is it set up the relationship, which is still going on to this day, that Ollie Queen and Hal Jordan are the very best of friends. They have been for a really long time. Also Barry, so I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you have Hal Jordan as a character, and in the history of it, he's had this intense friendship with both Green Arrow and Barry Allen, who's the Flash, and they both represent two completely different types of
the spectrum. One's super liberal, one's conservative.
Exactly, and their friendship with Hal is very different than one another, and it's always interesting when the three of them are together, which kind of ties in a little bit to the JLA stuff, and
Black Canary gets short shrift because she's in this as much as any of them, and it's not. She's
the pretty bird.
No, but this is like the era. They weren't really pushing the female hero.
Well, the title was Green Arrow, Green Lantern.
I know, but she's as much of it as the other one.
One of the stories that introduced me, one of the first Hal Jordan stories I ever read was JLA Year One, written by Mark Waid, drawn by Barry Kitson.
Oh, so good.
This is a wonderful JLA story.
It's a 12-issue. It's a big, thick story. It's a lot.
Yeah. After this, the same team also did a story called
Brave and the Bold.
Brave and the Bold, Barry and Hal. Which is I don't believe exists. Like it's out of print, so it's hard to find. Also good, but this was a better story, to be completely honest. It's about the forming of the JLA. Green Arrow and Green Lantern are both in it, and Barry Allen just a good retelling of Silver Age stories.
A modern version of the
Yeah.
origin of the JLA, which is, and Mark Waid, this was done coming off the heels of Kingdom Come, so he was kind of at the height of his DC kind of.
Mark Waid did a real good job with this, and the Barry
Yeah.
Kitson art is very smooth and very nice and just well
Thorough.
done.
This is when they attempted to retcon, make the JLA make sense, and so they got rid of Wonder Woman, replaced her with Black Canary, and I think this has since been retconned, but it doesn't matter because this is a fantastic.
It's a great story. You can read it
Fantastic,
on your own.
and this is unfortunately I think it's also out of print, but you can find them at comic stores or used online. I bought this used online, but this is
Or conventions.
This is one of the better JLA stories, especially from that era. This is also coming at the same time as Morrison's JLA, so it kind of complements that.
It does.
And it's very much that was a great era for JLA.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me what my favorite Hal Jordan story is, I would probably tell you The New Frontier by Darwin Cook. It's not specifically a Hal Jordan story, but he's the
He's the
character.
center
He's the
of it.
main character.
Yeah, he's like sort of the linchpin of the whole thing.
Don't open it because I just want to read
I know
it.
it's too beautiful.
Oh, stop. Oh,
You don't have to buy the big balls out absolute.
it's
copy.
although the new edition's out, they reprinted it. So
Yeah.
this is the original Absolute, which went out of print, but they have put it back into print just this summer.
There's also soft covers you can get.
Darwin Cook in his classic kind of almost retro style. The New Frontier is a retelling of the origins of the DC universe in the Silver Age, matching up to the year of the events as they actually would have occurred
Exactly.
when
So
they-
this really is a Silver Age story.
Yeah.
It's like if Hal Jordan was Green Lantern in 1960, what would he be like? But without the hokiness that is associated with the older comics.
And it was also timed in the book. The chronology is when they came out in the comics. So when Showcase 22 came out the same year, that's the year he comes out in this story, which is kind of neat in terms of kind of storytelling. And it deals with the atomic age, and it deals with there's a communism aspect to it. There's a aliens aspect to space travel. Like it touches on all these things that are America in the late 50s, as well as DC as a superhero world in the late 50s, and it's
and also a more beautiful book you will not find.
No. Also, if you're more visually minded, there's a animated adaptation of it where and Hal Jordan is the main character of that as well. So if you want some of that action, some of that animated action.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, it's funny because Green Lantern is one of those characters where, I mean, like, when I started reading DC, I started reading The Flash and Green Lantern. Like, I didn't go to Batman or Superman. Or, like, I've always kind of liked the Green Lantern, even going back to the Super Friends, like.
And it's just a really strong time for the character.
You know what else is I always hear this a lot, and people say Hal's boring. And I don't find that to be the case at all. I just think he's a different kind of character.
Yeah.
He's more of a military type of guy. He's a test pilot, and I think from all these stories, he's a very interesting type of character, and I don't buy the idea that he's boring at all. I think that's a leftover feeling from previous times when people weren't writing him well.
It's the feeling that caused them to run wild with the character and basically destroy him.
Right.
And I don't mean that in like the angry fanboy way, but by destroying him, they were able to build him up again, and now we have something now that is better than what we had before.
If they didn't have him go crazy and destroy go parallax and all that kind of the Coast City stuff, we wouldn't get what Jeff Johns is doing now. Jeff Johns is doing
That's a good
now.
point.
So I mean that's the one thing. I mean you might not like what's going on in the comics you read now, but it could lead to something better down the road if you're patient.
It becomes fertilizer for the new tree to grow.
Very, very patient.
Exactly. So
this is a bunch of Hal Jordan stuff, a bunch of Green Lantern stuff. Hopefully we've caught you up. We've given you a bunch of trades you can check out. Really, if you read those trades we listed, and we'll have them listed on the website,
you'll be good to go.
You'll be good to go. You can jump right onto Blackest Night. You can jump right into Green Lantern. You'll be happy. And all these old ones too will make.
This will be the source of your happiness.
So you can write in with anything you might want to say at contact@iFanboy. That's always the email address.
Contact@ifanboy.com.
That
or
works too.
You can call our voicemail
You
line.
don't know that by now.
Call our voicemail line at 1-888-FANBOYS. That's 1-888-326-2697.
And on iFanboy.com, that will be the discussion for this show. We'll talk about Blackest Night. We'll list all these books here we've got, the ones we mentioned. You can find those if you've forgotten. Josh is going to make
I
out.
haven't opened this
If
in
you
a
go
while.
to ifanboy.com/Amazon, you can see a whole list of all the books we talk about. You can buy them directly from Amazon. Or if you go to ifanboy.com/store, you can check out where you can get nifty T-shirts, like the one I'm wearing. Or you can become a member of iFanboy where you can join the community there. We appreciate that.
So this is just hours and hours of good Green Lantern 11. And I don't know about you guys, we should watch the movie.
I think
Let's
you're
watch
right.
New
3
Frontier.
panels of gorgeousness on every page.
This is not the New Frontier show, although.
Yeah, it's enough. You only need 2 seconds.
The editing happens, the slicing.
I like to get mine all converted to tape and then like bring the cutter in
Yeah.
and then I convert it back. I gotta tell a scene back
because
to.
I have all those pencils, those grease pencils. I gotta use them for something.
I put it on 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
Well, I have all that leftover tape.
Well, I have a
from-
Steam back that that really can
I don't want to do anything. I can't whine.
Well, that's how I do the audio show. I get the reel-to-reel going.
Visor, because I use
Yeah.
my visor.
I get the visor and I get the matching suspenders.
Nice, yeah.
And then I have the rolled up,
I have a Thelma Schoonmaker skin suit.
Ugh. And then it got weird.
Yeah.